He that giveth his mind to the law of the Most High, and is occupied in the meditation thereof, will seek out the wisdom of all the ancient, and be occupied in prophecy. Welcome, friends. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. It's a great honor to be with all of you again, and we thank you for taking the time to join us in live broadcasts. I'm honored to be here with James Braithwaite and also Kylee Buckley, and they are joining us from New Zealand. And so thank you both for, taking the time to be with us this evening. It's going to be a very interesting topic and one that I think the listening audience will be certainly curious about. But before we, go into that topic as well, if you would, after saying hello and everything, if you would give out your contact, website, anything that you'd like to share as far as, anything of that manner. Kylee, are you there, sister?
I am. Hi, Zen, and thank you
Hello.
so much for having us on your show. We hope that,
no, thank you. And James, brother James, are you there?
Yes, hi, Zen. Yeah, likewise this side. We're honoured to be with you guys today from New Zealand, and we pray that whatever we have to share with you guys is going to shed some light on our current position in this world, the Babylonian system, where it originates from in the context that we're going to be talking about today, and how it affects our daily lives, with most none the wiser. So look forward to getting into the details of the discussion today with you guys, and sharing the little bit that we know, and taking questions and trying to guide those along the path that we've been on for the last 2 years or so. And we hope it's going to shed light, feed those that are looking for and searching for knowledge. And we pray that it will be a blessing to all.
I definitely think it will. Certainly, when I heard you guys talking about this topic, it piqued my interest, and I think that the listening audience also in seek of answer to some of the things which we'll be speaking about this evening, which the name of the show is Unplugging from the Matrix. And so I think that will also pique the interest of all those that are listening. And so, but anyways, many of you will recognize that Kylee is one of the authors that has published through us. She wrote the book I, Mary, which is the story of the Virgin Mary, and covers also the infancy gospels and the coming together of Joachim and Anna, which interestingly enough is one of the books I'm working on now, a children's book on the coming together of Joachim and Anna, the birth of the Virgin Mary, her being brought up in the temple, and then how that led to the Immaculate Conception of the Savior Messiah. So it's going to be very interesting. But if you would, Kylee, before we move into it, just speak a little bit about that. And you can find her book at sacredwordpublishing.com, and then we'll move into the topic of the discussion for this evening.
Thank you, Zen. Yes, well, I've been on a quest from probably about 2010, truth-seeking, and reading a lot of ancient scrolls and texts, and getting back to the original on all these stories that we read in the Bible. So that led me to learning about Mary's true story, and putting it together in a timeline of what actually happened and occurred for her and her parents, and just the prophecies that have been fulfilled. So I wrote the book, I, Mary, and same like with James, we've been on this quest for truth, which isn't just one topic. It actually is very broad, and brings in, like what we're going to talk about today, that was actually happening in Mary's day as well. and Yahusha spoke about it in his, in the Bible. So it goes way back, and it's important, I think, to study these things for yourself, to sort of gain a deeper understanding of why things are the way they are and how they got there.
Yes, absolutely. One other thing I'd like to bring up before we, go deeper into the topic is how you two met. And so can you just share a little bit about that?
Well, we went to a conference up in Auckland, which is in the North Island of New Zealand, a few years ago now, and it was a flat earth conference.
Awesome.
We met there and we were just very good friends. In fact, there's a bunch of us that all went as individuals to the conference, and we've kept up, and much of them may be listening in today. So, yeah, it's just amazing how, how the depth of a relationship you can have with those that seek the truth. It's just different to those that, even of your own family, perhaps, that are not truth seekers. So, yeah, we've been very good friends. It's just been evolving over time, I suppose. Yes.
Awesome. That's wonderful. All right. Well, James, I'm going to get you to kind of lay out the foundation for the discussion and go ahead and start with the origins of the Babylonian system and why it's important for people to know and understand the things that you're going to be sharing this evening.
Awesome. Thanks, Zen. Okay. Basically, what we're going to be looking at today is in a nutshell, a taxation issue. And it goes back to the days of Jared or Yasha. And it involves a man that found out a novel way on how to tax the dead in the literal sense of the word. People were, in his neck of the woods, were to a hill, and they were buried in the normal manner of things. And this guy came along, and he wanted to have an audience with the king at the time. And so he couldn't get an audience with the king. That would only happen once a year. So what he does is he decides to get to a group of men together, act as guards, and he commandeers this burial site, and he starts charging people to bury their dead. And this goes on for about a year in context. And when the king eventually starts traveling through his provinces, he hears about this man called Rikeon. And everybody's complaining to the king that there's a man that's charging exorbitant taxes for them to bury their dead in the normal form. They've never had this issue before, and now suddenly it's costing them all a fortune. Suffice to say, Rikeon has made a sizable fortune during this year before the king starts his travel through the land. And the king has him called before him. So before he gets before the king, he sends a whole lot of gifts and jewels and horses and a whole lot of fine things to appease the king before he has his audience. And eventually gets before the king, and the king looks at all these jewels and everything, and gets to talking with this man, Rikeon, and establishes the fact that this man came up with this smart idea to tax the dead. The king thought it was such a fantastic idea. He put him over much of his estate and things in the land, and he was the first man that I believe they called by the name, they gave him the name Pharaoh. And every king thereafter in those days would be named Pharaoh. So the name Pharaoh goes back to the man who first taxed the dead. So now in context, we look at what this Babylonian system of taxation brings to our current world, the world that we live in now. And the taxation of the dead hasn't changed one iota. In fact, it has just got a lot more refined and a lot more devious in its nature. And this sleight of hand, so to speak, goes to our birth. in the course of this discussion, I'm going to be using terms which refer to maritime or admiralty law, which most will recognize as the law of the sea, the Holy See. It goes back to the Vatican. And then common law or law of the land, Yahuwah's law. This is the two entities at war at each other behind the scenes. It is these two law forms, God's law and man's law. Man's law being admiralty law, which is basically contract law, the law of shipping and commerce. And God's law is natural law. Do no harm to others, do no harm to their estates or property, and deal righteously one with another. So in the context of this fraud that we're going to speak about today, this taxation fraud, let's call it that, we start at our birth certificates. That's basically where it all begins. And just the term alone, we're going to talk about language in the context of this fraud going forward, and how the English language has been usurped. And it's literally a lot of spells, a lot of very deceitful spells, even in the word spelling, the first portion of it being spell. So we are going to cover in general the two law forms that are covered in two different dictions or dictionaries. One will be referred to as the Black's Law Dictionary. This is the law of the courts. This is the Vatican's law, the law of the Bar Association. And they have English terminologies for a lot of what they talk about, but their meaning is completely different to what we are taught, as far as, for instance, the Oxford Dictionary goes. So there and again, we're going to cover the sleight of hand that has enslaved us all, starting with our birth certificates. In a nutshell, that's how Babylon started under this taxation of mankind, and the birth certificate is where they continue in perpetuity and perpetrate it against mankind, living men and living women today. That's in a nutshell what we're going to be discussing today.
Awesome. We can see that this system has gone back thousands of years. And I do remember the story of this individual. Did you say that it was in the book of Jasher? I think I read it in the Legends of the Jews too. I'm not exactly positive, but I do remember reading it in some of the extra biblical material.
Correct. If you can, I'll just briefly read. There's only about 4 or 5 sentences.
Yeah, please.
If we can cover it. It's in Jasher 14, starting at verse 27, if anybody wants to follow with us. I'm reading out of the Sefer. And the king answered and said to Rikayon, your name shall no more be called Rikayon, but Pharaoh shall be your name, since you did exact a tax from the dead. And he called his name Pharaoh. Verse 28. And the king and his subjects loved Rikayon for his wisdom, and they consulted with all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim to make him perfect under the king. And all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim and its wise men did so, and it was made a law in Mitzrayim. And they made Rikayon Pharaoh prefect under Osiris, king of Mitzrayim. And Rikayon Pharaoh governed over Mitzrayim, daily administering justice to the whole city. But Osiris the king would judge the people of the land one day in the year when he went out to make his appearance. And Rikayon Pharaoh cunningly usurped the government of Mitzrayim, and he exacted a tax from all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim. And all the inhabitants of Mitzrayim greatly loved Rikayon Pharaoh. And they made a decree to call every king that should reign over them and their seed in Mitzrayim Pharaoh. Therefore, all the kings that reigned in Mitzrayim from that time forward were called Pharaoh unto this day. Now, in the context of what we're going to be discussing, this Pharaohic form takes on the form of the Vatican, and we will go into depth as to how this is established, and the Sestu KV Trust that was created on the back of our birth certificates, and how this applies to the Vatican and their world dominance and control in all things taxable, being us living men and women. And we're going to uncover how they did it for you, and we're going to discuss it at length.
And there is a remedy at the end.
And there is remedy. There's always remedy in their world. We've got to remember going forward in this discussion that in the world of witchcraft, Babylonian governance, they must always have remedy for us. But under their maxims of law that govern them, they do not have to expound on this fraud. They do not have to teach us about it, but remedy must be there, so that there was always and is always a way out for us, but we have to learn about it in order for us to claim the rights to give back unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, and cling unto Yah what he has given us. And this is going to give us a bit of insight on how we go about doing that.
Well, another interesting aspect that a lot of people are not aware of is that the crown in the UK, Queen Elizabeth, that she owns 1/6, or according to what people say about property, is that the crown owns 1/6 of the total landmass. And there's a remedy for this as well, which is interesting and is connected to this. And it's also something that Kylee and James have put into action and have basically declared an island there in New Zealand, which they are making a sanctuary, like a city of refuge for believers. And that is in process as well. And in the shows that we're going to be doing, as well as we're going to be doing some live streams after this initial radio broadcast, where they will show and in sharing screen, bring forth all of the information for those of you that are interested in what they have also done and achieved in becoming knowledgeable about this Babylonian system, and also how it, because we're still in the enmity between the seed line, as far as the seed of the woman and the seed of the serpent. This is an ongoing war. And the Babylonian law and that of Yahuwah's law are in direct contradiction, in the same manner that we see, the Talmud, the Talmudist Jews, the synagogue of Satan, and that of the Torah observant Jews, and those that know, the Hebrew Israelites that know Christ as Savior Messiah. And so, this is ongoing conflict, and the war between the bloodlines, the seed of Cain and the seed of Adam, this is all tied to all of that as well. And so can you just make mention of, as far as the city of refuge and what you guys have achieved in order to help people to understand, what could be the conclusion of becoming knowledgeable about this, and how there's a bigger picture to everything that you're going to be sharing this evening and in the shows that we do going forward.
Yes, okay. What you basically touched on there is a term that maybe some will be familiar, and it's called an allodial claim, an allodial title claim. Basically, allodial would mean a removal of title. If we understand or go into studying how the crown, which is the city of London, now there's three distinct, let's call them estates or countries within countries, and it goes back to the Vatican. The Vatican is its own state within Rome, within the country known as Italy, but it has its own flag, its own law form, its own police force. The same applies to London, or not the whole geographical city of London, but a 1 square mile area within the city of London called the City of London. It's the banking mile. It's referred to as the banking mile. And if you walk the streets of London, you will see specific statues. They like a dragon type dog-looking entity with its tongue sticking out. And that denotes where you move from the outer city of London to the inner city of London, which is the place where all property title is literally held. All banking is world banking is all instituted and run from this 1 square mile. Then we move over to Washington State, and that becomes the third crown, or the triple crown. All go back to the Vatican. It also has its own flag, like the City of London, like the Vatican State. It has its own flag, its own apportioned piece of dirt that it calls its own. So it's a nation within the United States. So these 3 entities run all commerce all over the world. And it's run by way of what we call the UCC, or Universal Commercial Code. This is the law form that they use, maritime law, and this is how they create chattel out of us. It goes back to understanding this principle, which brings about the allodial claim, and the allodial claim is a cancellation of the writ. It's a cancellation of the title, because all of these entities are what we refer to as legal fictions. They're corporations, they're dead entities. They have no life force but those that work for them or work within them. But the entities themselves have no life. And a legal fiction cannot own anything tangible. It can only own what it creates. So what does it create? It claims land, and then it creates a title. So, many of us listening tonight have all got mortgages or have had mortgages in our lives where we have, to our best knowledge, purchased a piece of dirt with a house on it. And we believe we have purchased this property. We now own this land. But it is far from that. We do not ever own the land. We buy the paperwork for that land. We own the title and the title only. This is how they create this ownership fraud. So you're given a title and you're told that this is the land, but it is not. So an allodial, when we make an allodial claim, we're claiming land that is supposedly unclaimed. It's uninhabited. Nobody lives on it. So it is free. So we put a allodial claim on it, and this is a process of establishing your emblem, your flag. You raise a flag on it, you plant a crop on this portion of land, and you go through a process of letting the powers that be know in a specific format that you have found this property. It is uninhabited. There's no dwellings, there's no living beings, there's nothing there, and you're now going to claim it and you are going to develop it. So allodial literally cancels all title. And if you cancel title to a land, you thereby also cancel all acts, all statutes that would have had bearing on that piece of land by way of its title, because all the titles are linked either to the banks or to the law system that prevails over us, being this maritime and admiralty law. So the title of allodial cancels it, and you can then make use of it. So it's taking back what isn't theirs to begin with. They didn't buy it. Some of them have made treaties or forced First Nation peoples into accepting treaties or loans from banks, which become so exorbitant that eventually these nations lose their rightful title to the land. Now, the banking system that we're going to be covering with the bonds created on the birth certificate is going to expound on that fact. But in essence, that's how we do it. We make a title, we claim a piece of land, which is normally under the Crown's so-called authority and run by one of its subsidiaries. It could be the Ministry of Agriculture, it could be the Ministry of Conservation. They come in different guises and different forms. But it is a process that you will learn about as you study the law form that we're under. And once you've studied how to get out from underneath it, there are remedies involved, and the specific one covers land.
Awesome.
We don't take it. We don't harm any other living man or woman. So this is something that you can do. That's proud.
Hold on, Kylee. Hold on. All right, we'll be right back for a second portion, and then I'll turn it back over to you.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
In a world where we are ridiculed for questioning mainstream narrative, it can feel like we are studying alone. So together with you, Sacred Word Publishing classes has begun. Are you interested in biblical Hebrew, the Nochian calendar, extra biblical texts, or other esoteric topics? Join any class for free. Or do you have research you'd like to share with fellow truth seekers? We'd love to help you set up a class. As students, we also have an opportunity to be teachers, and whichever role you're settled into today, we'll be happy to study with you at swpclass.com. Email us at sacredwordpublishingllc@gmail.com with your class ideas, and we look forward to learning with you. See you in class!
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
Many truth seekers are constantly studying alone. But there is a place where we can come together. The Digital Readers Club is our online ecclesia meant for those who've forsaken churchianity but still want the closeness of a family to study with. Join us every Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time to put together the puzzle pieces of truth scattered throughout the ancient scriptures.
Here on Earth, we're intrigued by the sun, moon, and stars, and imagine there's got to be planets like ours. So conceive of a face on the surface of Mars, so in need of a meaning and purpose we've lost. And indeed, they believe that they these might be our gods, or that maybe with time we'll do right and evolve and eventually reach what they seek and then solve all the problems of man. But they really don't know that they fall, and the works of our hands are but just filthy rags. So we travel the lands to dig up our past, time our lapses, and with it are much of the facts of imagine that gods came in alien class.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for second portion. I'm gonna turn it back over to you, Kylee. You were going into something before we got to break there, and so let me give you a chance to finish up.
Thank you, Zen. An allodial claim is a claim that you would use to put on a portion of land that is owned by the Crown, because you wouldn't do it on a bit of land that is owned by another living man or woman, but a Crown entity you can. And also farmers that have had their farm and their family for a number of years, and they might have a mortgage, and the government, I know New Zealand is putting a lot of difficult acts and statutes on them where they're unable to farm like they used to, and they could put on an allodial claim knowing that they were going to remain living there on their farm and perhaps give it to their family for the generations. So they could remove the title off their land by putting in an allodial claim, and it would remove the council and the government and the banks immediately from off it, because the title has basically been ripped up and put in the bin. So there's remedy, and it doesn't cost you much at all to do it. So this is what James and I have done on an island here in the Marlborough Sounds of New Zealand, and we're planting it out with fruit trees and putting a garden, and we're going to be building soon dwellings on there for those that are in the way that need a place to come to, a place of refuge. And there's other people in New Zealand that are doing them as well. So it's very, very liberating to take back the land. Last year we took, a friend of ours took a bit of land called the Abel Tasman National Park, which is a beautiful part at the top end of the South Island of New Zealand. He put an allodial claim on that, which is, how big is that, James?
That is about 55,000 acres, and it was done on behalf of New Zealanders across all nationalities, across all race barriers, as a collective peoples that live on the land known as Aotearoa or New Zealand. It was made available to all. So he made a allodial claim on behalf of, and anybody that is looking to set up a house or home or step out of the matrix, this land has been made available for those.
So, and he's renamed it New Free Land.
Awesome.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. And our land on the island, we've called it Tandatora. James is South African, and Tanda is Zulu for
the love of.
And then Torah.
So it's in Zulu. Tandatora means for the love of the law.
Awesome. And again, I had mentioned that 1/6 of the landmass of the earth, the plane of the earth, has been declared by the explorers, conquistadors, different people, for the crown. And so the crown and the land for the crown extends all over the world. I believe, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, Canada, different parts. You can look up the different nations that are under the crown, and you'll see that this is something that can be done in a lot of places all over the world. And so many of you can repeat in similarity what both Kylee and James and their friends have done with this allodial law. And in that manner, you can set up these cities of refuge in the same way that they are currently doing, and have a place for believers to go to come together in a manner that in the book of the Order of the Ancients, it speaks about how the believers came together in a manner that was communal, and they shared everything, and they took care of one another in a way that they weren't trying to increase personal gain, but they looked after one another in a communal setting, much in the same way that I believe those the truth seekers and believers that came together in Qumran and had separated themselves from the Pharisees and the established order of those that Christ said were ye are of your father the devil. We know them, the synagogue of Satan, that they were the murderers of the prophets, from all the way from Abel to Zacharias. And so, again, this is a war, and this is a way to take back your power and do it in a manner where you don't need, a lot of money, because again, you don't have to buy the property, but just make a claim on it and then file in the necessary manner, which again, James and Kylee will be sharing that information and teaching you over the series of the broadcasts that we're going to be doing, how you could repeat and perform this in your wherever you are in that part of the world that you live in. And so this is very awesome and exciting and liberating information. And so let me turn it back over to you, James, so that you can set the outline and go step by step on the relevant as far as the origins into whatever is necessary to educate everybody listening about this topic.
All right, going forward then, we're going to start at the beginning as far as our lives is concerned, and how Babylon affects us in our lives even though we don't know it. And it starts with our birth certificate. First of all, again, we go back to the words. English is a bunch of spells, verbal spells. Birth is a name that most will be familiar with, in that it rings true to shipping. You have a shipping berth. You get into a dock and you berth your ship. Now, when we are born, unbeknownst to our parents, our mums and dads, they were induced to register us with the government, register our births with the government. And in so doing, under the Black's Law definition of register, it means they unwittingly transferred ownership of us, their children, their offspring, to the government of the day, and it's immaterial as to what landmass you live on. If your landmass and your associated government has a birth certificate system in place, then you are part and parcel to this Sestu KV fraud that was perpetrated by the Vatican with the assistance of your government. And how they do that is they very cleverly create a birth certificate, which is a bond, a literal bond, and on it they use your Christian names or the appellation given by your parents, your mum and dad. They, for instance, called me James. James William was my given name when I was born by my parents, and I'm of the family Braithwaite. But what the government do is they take that name and they merge my family name, being the surname, which is the slave name, and they add it to my Christian names, being my born names, the given appellation given by my parents. And what they do is they put this name that they create in all caps. Now, if we go to the Chicago Styles Manual of Languages, and we look at all caps diction and what the meaning of an all caps word and sentence is, it will be classified as a glossa. It's not a language, but it reads like a language. In fact, it reads a lot like English. We can read all caps writing, but it isn't a true language. So therein begins the fraud. They create this all caps entity. Now, anything that's to do with the all caps capital lettered name is a company or a form or a company or a trust or something in this manner. It's got to do with commerce. And you can make a quick reference to a number of articles in your possession. One of them would be your bank card. Another would be your driver's license or a fishing license or a firearm license. Anything to do with a license is associated with this all caps derivative of your original Christian name, which would have been an upper and lower case name. They've made it all caps, and they've told you, oh, this is now you. You are this all caps James William Braithwaite, all caps letters. This is you now. And we, because we can read it, we go, oh, yeah, that sounds like me, so that must be me. And that is where the fraud begins. So from birth, you are induced, unbeknownst to you, to associate yourself as a living man or a living woman with this all caps legal fiction that your government created and gave you this birth certificate. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Under maritime law, trust law, and everything that deals in commerce and the law of the sea, when you're about 7 years of age, under their legal system, you are deemed lost at sea. And then they, as the creators of your birth certificate, become the administrators of said trust, or Sestu KV Trust, this business, this corporation that they created on the back of your all caps name. And they start making money off your birth certificate details that are then traded on the US stock market. So you become a literal traded commodity in commerce, but they don't tell you about it. Yeah, they form this trust, this Sestu KV Trust. Now, if we go back in the time of when this Vatican brought this about, it's a papal bull that goes back to the date of 1666, a rather interesting date, I think, to a lot of our listeners. 1666 is when they created this Sestu KV Trust, which had to do with the burning in the city of London, which I believe was one of our earlier false flags. And a lot of people that were lost under this, they brought in this papal bull, the Sestu KV Trust, to administer estates on those that died in the city of London's fires that couldn't be traced. And this became the law form that they use to this date in administrating our birth certificates. So how does this fraud work, and why is it important? Well, for a number of reasons. The fact that you are associating with this legal entity literally means that you are contracting to the realm of the dead. You have taken yourselves out of the realm of the living, and you are now contracting with the realm of the dead, being this legal fiction. And in their legal system, in their courts, they never deal with a living man or a living woman. They can only ever deal with the dead. That man with a black robe that sits as a so-called judge is nothing but an administrator of your Sestu KV Trust. And in today's world, when you go into their court systems, they create what we call a bond. And this bond gets taken out of your Sestu KV Trust, which if you're a man of 40, 50 years of age, would be at this stage of your life worth millions and millions of dollars. It's a large amount of money. This is where money comes from for, well, I say money, it's not true money. It's what we call legal tender or currency, but it's not true money, because since 1933, no money on this earth is real. It's a fiat currency. It's not backed by gold or backed by silver. So in essence, they trade with you as a commodity. and they access these trusts, and this is what the IMF will use for dishing out to the different governments around the world to build infrastructure and roads and hospitals and all the rest of it. But it affects us mostly because when they create acts and statutes in Parliament and create these rules that they call acts and statutes, they tell us that this is the law. However, this is not true law. This is what we call the color of law. But we, unbeknownst and uneducated as we are and ignorant as we are, we accept these formats of supposed law, and we are then governed by these statutes and acts, which in real life have absolutely no bearing on a living man or a living woman unless they consent to it. But when we contract to the name, this birth certificate name that they created, we automatically contract to it. So although we think we are living free, as long as we are still attached and associated with this birth certificate that was created for us, we are consenting and contracting to the very Babylonian system we're trying to release ourselves from. That's in essence the birth certificate, how it operates. But it goes, the sleight of hand goes a little bit deeper. We all have heard of the terminology when we're born, that we are born with an afterbirth. We all hear this topic, and normally if you have a midwife at home with you, this afterbirth would be given to her and she would dispose of it. It is this afterbirth that they actually name your all caps name. They are actually naming this afterbirth. And if you look under the Black's Law Dictionary definition of human, it goes back to the terminology of a monster. Now, in the Black's Law Dictionary, a human being is a monster with no inheritable blood rights, and it's an entity that may not own land. That's their definition, their sub-definition of the word human. So once again, the Black's Law Dictionary has got nothing to do with true English. It is a mixing of the language and a mixing of the meanings. And so this is how they operate. So if you go into court and the judge says to you, but are you not human? Your first reaction is to say, yes, of course I'm human. And as soon as you've done that, you've already consented without knowing it to the realm of the dead. You are consenting to being the trustee for and behalf of this trust that they created. And if they can make you the trustee in their legal system, then by rights and law, you are liable for all of its debts. And what are its debts normally presented in? They're normally presented in the form of a fine, a speeding ticket, or something like that. It'll always be made out to your trust, your Sestu KV name. It's never made out to your common law name or your born name. It's always only made out to your Sestu KV trust. Anything you get in the post, anything you get in the post will be to this all caps entity that they created, and you will automatically open the letter. In doing so, you've contracted, and you are now the trustee of whatever goes with that name. So how do we address this? There's always, as I said earlier, there's always remedy. In knowing what they've done in contract law, it boils down to, in contract, any contract, there must always be full disclosure. This is their law. This is the law that the maxims of law that governs their world. Now, they weren't and did not give your parents, nor yourselves, many of you parents listening to this, they did not give you the information. They weren't honorable, and they did not give full disclosure as to what they had done with your birth certificate fraud. So the first thing is, if there is non-full disclosure in any contract, it is a fraud. And a fraud means it's an immediate cancellation of the contract. So that's the starting point. But there's a long road in actually getting out of the matrix, but that's the beginning. It's acknowledging the fact that there is a fraud that is being perpetrated against you and your offspring, as they stand if they have a birth certificate and you are contracting to that birth certificate. So
Wow.
that's where it begins. Your birth certificate is the Babylonian matrix, and this is how they tax you. This is how they get you to do things that you don't want to do. There are many laws, or what they call laws, many statutes and acts, which we as parents think, that's insanity, I can't do that. And yet we feel obligated and a must to conform, and well, it's the law, we have to follow. No, it's not the law. It is a statute, it's an act of parliament, the very word act. It's all pantomime, but as long as they can get you to consent in material as to the manner and how they need you to get to that point of consent, that's immaterial. But if you do consent at the end of the day, then you have contracted to that, and you will be combed and dealt with accordingly.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that here in America that even taxes are illegal, and that the whole thing of establishment of taxes on wages and earnings, that this was never even ratified through constitutional law, and that we had this individual named Aaron Russo, the same individual that exposed other aspects of what was going on with the New World Order and the elites and how they have subjugated. He made a movie called Freedom, From Freedom to Fascism, and how it is that the elites, basically create money out of nothing, and how the Federal Reserve System here in America, and even the printing of the money, that this was a constitutional authority given to Congress that was usurped by this private elitist group of bankers, and that ever since the Federal Reserve System has been in place, that they've basically had the wealth and the money to control the world. All the world's a stage, as what they say, and to pin the minorities of people against each other in controlled opposition. And so, the entire currency, the way that the IMF works and the way that leaders are propped up, and then they give them all this wealth as long as they accept the work through these transnational corporations, they pin all this debt on the people, and they prop up these puppets to serve as leaders of these different countries. And usually these individuals are of the lineage of Cain, and they are in blood oath. They do the Masonic handshakes and are part of what is the establishment. And as James was talking about earlier, with the Vatican, the City of London, and also the Washington D.C., that these are countries within countries, and that they have their own police, their own laws, their own flags even. I believe this to be Mystery Babylon, and what we see cited in Scripture as the beast system that is put into place, and that at the end of days the Antichrist comes forth to govern and to take control and to rule through this entity. And I think that what we are talking about as far as the Babylonian system, and even the currency, wages, taxes on wages and earnings, all of this is connected to what James is talking about. And it's all a Ponzi scheme, because if you watch that movie by Aaron Russo, From Freedom to Fascism, it shows how even taxes are voluntary. And yet the IRS is like a mafia. They strong arm the American people into paying taxes, and anybody that challenges them, they illegally put into jail and put them under the custody of this, these fascist laws that they've established to just keep the people in check. And this is all, again, part of this, the maritime law and all of that. Even the flags, with the fringe and all that is connected in some manner to this. But we are almost to break. And so when we return back, we'll get James to, continue and Kylee to cover more of this. And also we'll try to, at the very end of the show, leave some time for questions. And I'm sure that many of you, will have questions and want to at least share commentary with, what we are covering, what we are sharing as well. And like I said, we are going to do a series of shows, of live streams where they present this information and also show you in sharing their screen exactly where you can go to get more and to research these topics in greater depth. And we'll be right back, everyone, for second hour.
Truth Frequency Radio is your #1 source for news and information without the hate, hype, and fear. We're proud to feature cutting-edge programs like The Christopher Everard Show, The Covert Report with Susan Lindauer, Enemy Within Radio with Tom Barnes, Freaky Friday with The Woo Crew, The Gematria Effect with Zachary Hubbard, America's Evil Genius with Travis Cook, Phoenix Rising Radio with Phoenix, Quantum Connections with Lucky, and dozens more. Did you know you can listen from any telephone by dialing 641-793-7117 or call into your favorite show toll free at 833-TFR-LIVE. Uncensored talk and news you won't hear in the mainstream media. Truth Frequency Radio, your protection from deception.
An animal control officer is in way over his head. It's the Onion Radio News. This is Doyle Redland reporting. Veteran animal control authorities in Tomahawk, Wisconsin are reporting that first-year recruit Todd Olstrom has taken on far more than he can handle with an angry 900-pound black bear. Supervisor John Reams.
Black bear is a powerful animal. Todd simply doesn't have the experience to handle it.
We go now live to Animal Control Officer Olstrom, who is still attempting to subdue the enormous bear. Todd, are you there? Tap him on the snout, Todd. Tap him on the snout. We can only hope that Olstrom took my advice. Convalescent home resident Terrence Collinger turned 97 years old today and celebrated the happy event with whatever staff were around. Staffer Karen Parks wandered by and described a brief but tolerable event.
I think someone went to the commissary to get him a cube of Jell-O with a candle in it or something. I'm sure he enjoyed it.
Though Collinger was grateful enough for the 5-minute celebration, he said he would have been just as happy to be left alone to watch Judge Judy and await the sweet release of death. Though the National Weather Service has not reported a tornado, hurricane, or flood in the Des Moines area, thousands are rapidly fleeing at this hour. City officials have issued no official evacuation orders and are advising residents to remain calm and to avoid overcrowded highways. Janet Wendell is one of thousands stalled on Interstate 35.
I just hope I can get out of here before it's too late.
Mayor Frank County told reporters this is the largest mass exodus from Iowa since 1997, when the president of the Dubuque Rotary Club urged citizens of that city to run for their lives. Doyle Redland for the Onion Radio News, online at theonion.com.
You must unite what has been set aside.
We are TFR, Truth Frequency Radio.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, for second hour. I'm your host, Zen Garcia. This is Secrets Revealed here on Truth Frequency Radio. And I am honored to be joined by my good friend, Kylee Buckley, and James Braithwaite from New Zealand. And it's a great honor to have and host you for this show, and also to bring forth this topic. This is something that even among the alternative truth-seeking community, there are very few that I know that have the expertise that both of you have in doing what you're doing, and also to put into action this particular knowledge base. And also, if you would, can you speak about the kingdom of Yah as well, and how you are, basically taking back your authority through the Most High in setting up these cities of refuge and using the allodial law as well. And then, of course, take it wherever you need to in bringing forth the information that we need to cover in this particular show to set up the next series as well.
All right, awesome, Zen. Let's carry we're going to look at the next topic is going to be remedy. Basically, what I've given you now is it's a somber picture. If you think about the fraud that has been perpetrated against every living man, woman, and child since birth, but without our knowledge. I don't think there's anybody listening here today that in any way thinks their parents would voluntarily sign off all rights and title to their own children to a state or a government. Nobody in their right mind truly would believe that. But this is, in essence, the fact of the matter in law, in commerce, and in contract. This has been done. This is not a conspiracy theory. It is a matter of fact, and it's a matter of law. In fact, for those of you going forward with these episodes with Zen, we're going to show you how you can take the details of your birth certificate, which is a bond, which is a legal tender, as it were. You can take the details. There's certain numbers attached to it, as well as your social credit number in America and other places. You have a social credit number. And these link directly to your CES to KV trust, or your all caps name that is traded on the US stock market. And I will show you how you can ascertain the current value of your bonds associated with your birth certificate, as well as other instruments like your driver's license. Anything that you sign or is created by way of license inadvertently becomes a bond. And going forward, remember that anything in their maritime admiralty court system is nothing but a taxation and a way and a manner to get to your CES to KV trust, as the judge in front on the bench is the administrator of your trust. So it may look like you think you're getting justice in it. You aren't. You're a transactable commodity. And all they're there to do is to extract capital from your trust. Now, a lot of people ask me, but can't we access this trust? I want my money back type thing. The problem is this. It is their trust. They created it. And a maxim in admiralty law, or a maxim in law in general, is he who creates owns. And this is the maxim that drives everything. So they created your birth certificate. They own, the Crown owns your birth certificate. And so they own everything associated with that birth certificate. And that is why they have the power that they do wield over you, because you contract unwittingly to that entity created on your birth certificate. And that's why they can give effect to the acts and statutes that they create to govern and keep you in servitude. However, as I stated right in the beginning, in their wizardry world of spells, enchantments, and everything that is Luciferian, there is always remedy. A lot of you will be familiar with the terminology associated with being hidden in plain sight. Those that of you that travel down some of the rabbit holes associated with the nature of this earth that we live on, and the rakia, its true nature, its true form, are all familiar with where these entities derive their spells and witchcraft from, how they enforce and enact them, how they indoctrinate and ensnare all those that are willing to lend an ear in their direction. Another maxim in their law worth mentioning is let he who will be deceived be deceived. It's a strange one, but nonetheless, in their world, in their law form, it is a maxim, which means it is a pinnacle of law in their world. So if anybody is deceived, well, let him be. That's their mantra, and that is the way that they deal with us. If they can deceive us, it's our problem, and they do not have to remedy or rectify it. It's because we are considered stupid sheep. We are just chattel, and they can do with us what they want. And in essence, they do, and in essence, they have, and they've done it for millennia. Now we're going to get to the better part. It's not all doom and gloom. There is remedy. And as in all things, knowledge is power, and Yah gives us power in the knowledge that he brings to us. A lot of us here listening to Zen have learned from him and others. For instance, on the Flat Earth Walks, we've learned, and knowledge has empowered us to make informed decisions about our world, our reality around us. And this, in a way, is one of those little ounces of gold, so to speak. The remedy associated with this fraud, this law form, this maritime legal construct that has been forced upon us, because at the end of the day, it is the law of the sea, has no place on land. But the Vatican and our governments have usurped the authority given them, and they've brought this law form onto the land, created ships of commerce out of us through our birth certificates, and administrate us in that manner. Now, how do we get out of it? Well, if you've been listening closely, you will hear every now and then I discuss the fact that this is a war, and Zen has covered it as well. It's not just a war about law, it's a seed war. But in the law form, the law is the law of the sea, which has been brought onto the land, versus the actual law of the land, God's law, Yahuwah's law. This is the law that we ultimately are supposed to be standing under and administering and living to in our lives. And having said that, when we look at jurisdiction, the Admiralty system and maritime law is the jurisdiction of the sea. The jurisdiction associated with common law or natural law, God's law, Yahuwah's law, is the law of the land. There are two distinct jurisdictions. Now we have established, I say we, there is a man by the name of David Joel Weems, who, fortunate for us, has been able to trace his lineage, not his lineage, but his lineage, back 124 unbroken generations. And so it takes him all the way back to King David, being his ancestral grandfather. Now, this information is unbroken. It has gone before the powers that be, and it now stands as a fact in law within their legal system as well. Now, having established this fact, the reason or the benefits for us pertaining to this fact is that it establishes us back to the land about 3,000 years, as far as the 124 generation goes. And it's a pertinent fact because for every generation that we can go back unbroken in time, where we have a written form being handed over from grandfather to son to their son, and so on through the generations, these 124 generations being unbroken take us back a long time and a long way to the land. And this establishes the right, title, and jurisdiction to a time frame that predates the current Vatican, the current system that we are under, this Babylonian system. And in their world, this is like having a deck of cards and they're all jokers and you can do exactly what you want. As far as the law form goes, it gives us the ability, through what this man has done, he has reinstituted the kingdom of David and the law form associated with the ancient house of Yasharel and the law that was given to us on how we were and are supposed to administer our lives. And in essence, it comes back to the common law format, which is do no harm to another man, do no damage to his property, and deal righteously with your fellow living man. That is the premise on all this law form. Now, in most law forms, they associate with just the maxims of law. But this law form that goes back to the house of David, the ancient house of David, is based on the maxims of equity, which differ to just the maxims of law, because they can create statutes and acts which would then create their own maxims and law. But the maxims of equity go more directly to the biblical writ of equity, meaning equal, balance, actual law where one isn't subjugated to a law form which is unjust. For instance, a man might do something wrong within their legal system and face an absolutely over-the-top fine for doing something, whereas it shouldn't be necessary. He should be able to get off, for instance, with a warning and go his own way or something like that. But their world is just a world of commerce. So the law has been set aside, justice has been set aside. Equity is no longer found within their court systems. It is only a matter of taxation and commerce. So in essence, establishing David Weems has established the ancient house of David. He has created within their trust law format a society called or known as the De Vida Society, the David Society, the De Vida Society, which means it means life. It means a corporation of life or a society for life. This is no longer about the dead. This is about the living. So as a quick explanation as to what's been done, let me give you the taxation law or the trust law form associated with this. What he's created is what we call a corporation sole, S-O-L-E. And if you do some research on this phenomena or this trust format, it's probably would be considered a super trust amongst trusts. To give you an indication, over the last about 440 odd years, there have been about 34 attempts for third-party individuals to try and access some or other form of a corporation sole, one of these super trusts. And that is why the Vatican uses them. They are so well protected in all law forms that nobody in 440 years, other than the 34 attempts, not one of the 34 attempts to breach a corporation sole has ever been successful, ever. And this is within their legal system. So trust me, if it could be done, it would have been done. So the De Vida Society that has been created on the back of this reestablishment of the ancient house of David is created within this, I forget the wording right now. Let me just think about it. It's a trust, but what is the trust's name? I forget. It'll come back to me shortly. I'll think about it.
Yeah, no problem.
This trust is created, and we then have the ability to join this society. And we join it. Why? We join it for its law form. Because its law form predates the maritime law and takes us back to the land, it stands in a higher jurisdiction. So they have created what we call the courts of the ecclesia, which is the body politic. It is made up of living men and living women like you and I. And we join this fraternity, this society, And we come under the protection of this law form, which bats directly against the Vatican maritime admiralty system. Now, to give you a context in visual terms, think of this as now the ability to play their game with them in their system. Currently, we've always gone into their court systems and we've had to play a game. One, they haven't told us the rules. The board game is there, the pieces are there, we don't know the rules, we don't know how to play the game, and we can never understand how we always get beaten up within their court system. Now, consider this revision now, standing under the court of the Ecclesia and the ancient House of David through the Davida Society as now going back into their court systems. And now we know that the game is chess, and they are our opposition, and they have their normal chess pieces, but we have a king, and all the rest of our chess pieces are queens. Who do you think is going to lose this game? You would have to be a real fool to be able to lose any chess game given those odds. You would have to be blindfolded. So that gives you a literal or visualization as to the power of the law in its natural raw form, standing directly under Yahuwah, our Heavenly Father. It takes us into a dimension of right, and in their world, right is the ultimate maxim, or truth is the ultimate maxim. And we now have that truth. We have it behind us in this law form, and it stands as a superior jurisdiction to any court on this earth, and that includes The Hague, for one reason, and this alone, is that its jurisdiction predates theirs, and their jurisdiction is of the sea, and ours is of the land. So this is now established fact in law, and any man, any living woman, anyone over the age of 18 can willingly consent to joining this society, the Davida Society, and fall under its protections as laid out by David Joel Weems. He doesn't take a position as king in the society. He's on a level par with every living man and every living woman. All it does is provide for us the law form that enables us to bat against this Babylonian system within their system.
That's awesome. Where can people find information about this society and to learn more about it?
That's a good question, and it's an easy find. If you go online and you punch in proclamationofpeace.org, so it's proclamationofpeace.org, proclamationofpeace.org. It will take you through to the Kingdom of David's website, and you will be able to read about how it was established, the Proclamation of Peace. You'll be able to read and learn all about the lineage associated with the Weems family and what has been done, how this has been exacted, why it is so powerful. And for those in the audience that know a little bit about law, once you start going through the establishment of the court of the Ecclesia, it will soon become apparent to you as to the power that is behind this law form that has been recreated. So literally what we've done, or what has been, I say what has been done is we have taken ourselves back as far as we can. This has been 3,000 years to the land, and we now stand directly under Yah, his control and his law form. So this is a righteous fight. This is a righteous stand, and it was spoken of in Ezekiel in I think it was 37:26, to the effect that our house is a house of ecumenical inclusion, a house of universal peace, a house of sanctuary, as foretold in Ezekiel 37:26. Moreover, it says, I will make a covenant of peace with them, and it shall be an everlasting covenant with them, and I will place them and multiply them, and will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forevermore. Now, if any of you have understood the fraud associated with the birth certificates and the bondage that we are all currently servitude to, we are nothing but bonded debt slaves to a bankrupt corporation, and they deal with us as such. This law form takes us out of that bondage. This association takes us out of their grasp and allows us to stand as living men and women to study further the law and how we further remove ourselves from bondage and exact, what's the right word? We exact remedy against them in their law form and in their system, and that is both financial and otherwise. I don't want to dangle the financial carrot. This is not about the benefits of the finances going forward, learning about this law form, other than once you have understood the gravity of what is put before you, it will make sense. I believe the Holy Spirit will witness to those that it's meant for, and you will understand what is put to you. You will understand why it carries with it the power that it does, and we will be able to take that right back to Yah's footstool, literally.
Awesome. Well, yeah, certainly I look forward to, speaking in greater depth about those benefits and what all this really entails. But yeah, please continue, because I know we have just one more segment after this, and also I'll check the chat room to see if there's questions that people would like to ask as well. But please continue, James.
All good. What I just want to touch on now is not just the joining up to the kingdom of David and standing under this re-established law form, but going back to the history in the US specifically, where in 1933 they changed the banking laws in the country, and the United States government, by a presidential decree, called in all gold to be handed in to government and to the Fed, to be more exact. And in doing so, the law thereafter mandated that all debt going forward for every living man and woman would be prepaid. But you are not taught this, but it is the law form. So all your debts from 1933 to even date have all been prepaid. Now I want to just give you a quick example as to how, before Kylee is going to take over. You want me to carry on?
Keep going.
And that relates to a quick example, which I'm going to use, because most of you will be able to relate to this. And this has got to do with your banking fraud or your mortgage fraud. And because all your debts are prepaid, when you sign up a mortgage with the bank, what you're doing is you're signing over the right and title to your property to the bank, and they will lend you something that they've created out of thin air. It's they don't lend you anything. They create digits on a computer screen and they give it to you. They transfer it into your account and you pay and you purchase your property. But they created no money. It's no currency. It was only digits. There's no gold backing whatever they've just done and given to you, because no currency on this earth is backed by gold. It's all fiat currency. So what they do is, about a month after you've signed your documentation pertaining to your mortgage, they access your trust, which is wealthy in their terms. It's worth millions and millions of dollars. And they will pay themselves, this is the banks now, they will pay themselves your full mortgage value with its interest off the top. And what the banks do is they will retain these mortgages, and once they've notched up about $1 billion worth of mortgages, they will sell those mortgages on to a third-party bank, normally your bigger banks like Citibank or JP Morgan, one of the big conglomerates, and they will buy out your bond for your mortgage, and you'll continue paying for the next 30 years into your bond. Unbeknownst to you, this has been settled in total about a month after you signed it up with your original bank. And under contract law, this is how, going forward, we teach people how to find remedy and cancel their bonds with banks, cancel their mortgages with banks, because they are based on fraud. So there is a certain paper trail and format that you follow in order to find remedy against these types of anomalies. But that's for another day. I'm going to let Kylee say something here quickly.
Yeah, I was just going to say, getting back to the Kingdom of David, James and I have been what I would call living in the private for probably at least the last year to maybe 18 months, which means individually we have learnt and studied the history and how it is with the fraud of the birth certificate, and we've learnt to take ourselves out of the system. For an example, we don't pay registration on our automobiles, we have private plates, and various things. So we've done this.
Hold on, Kylee. We'll give you space on the other side to talk about what you need to. Be right back, everyone.
So good, isn't it?
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here.
As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
All right, welcome back, everybody, for our final segment. I'm going to turn this back over to you, Kylee, and please continue. And don't worry if there are questions that pop up in the chat. We'll certainly get to them, but don't feel obligated to stop and continue with whatever you need to present.
Thank you, Zen. I was just saying earlier that James and I have been doing this research now for maybe a year and a half to 2 years, and been living what we call in the private, which is as an individual standing up against the system and not having a driver's license and cancelling our birth certificates and all these things that we have unwittingly signed into in our lives. And now with the Kingdom of David that has been established since 2011, but they've now opened the doors for all mankind to come and to join them. What it means now is that everybody can come, and that you don't have to know how to stand on your own in the private. You don't need to know anything. Just come and join them, and they will teach you. And what happens is they actually embed your name in the paperwork, and you just print off things and give it to the authorities. So you don't have to study it and write it up yourself like we have had to do. It's all been done for you with the accuracy and perfection of the law. So it's wonderful. Means there's anybody can go and can join and find remedy and then learn. And the paperwork is absolute. And it's all done in peace. It's not confrontational. So it's a wonderful thing.
With that, let me ask you, what does that mean as far as, the changes in your lives or the way that you get along in society? What are some of the particulars, as well as how have the authorities, the police, or how have they reacted, the judges, magistrates, whatever, the government, have they reacted to what you have done, and what has been kind of their response to your knowledge and your implementing this information?
Yeah. Well, we look at it as a point of education. So whenever we come across a police officer or somebody, if you have to go to court, a judge, we look at it to educate, because we take the mindset that they don't know. So, we're also fortunate in New Zealand that we have another jurisdiction here, not just the government, but we have a Maori jurisdiction that was set up in 1835, which was before our Treaty of Waitangi. So we've actually joined that jurisdiction, and the police here acknowledge it. So it goes back to the land of 1835. So we have been showing them that paperwork so they understand where we're coming from. And the people in New Zealand can grasp the fact of the Kingdom of David, how it goes back 3,000 years and what that means, because a lot of the people are aware of the Te Moana Nui Kiwa jurisdiction that goes back to 1835. So they have already a fairly good understanding of what it means to be on the land and the jurisdiction. So having said that, though, James was in court over something, and he had to stand his ground with the judge, and it was really quite interesting. The judge in the end just told him to go, and there was a bunch of young fellas that had been obviously rat bags, and they were grinning from ear to ear and giving us all thumbs up, and they had never seen somebody stand and speak with respect, but with truth to a judge and with authority. And they just told James to leave. So
that's awesome.
They all, and we're not the only ones in New Zealand. There's a bunch of us that are standing under what we call common law and have been doing this for a little while. And now joining the Kingdom of David, most of those people are coming straight onto the Kingdom of David, and it's growing very fast to the point where there's going to be another, the Kingdom of David is going to be very seen visually amongst people. even our vehicles we're going to be putting under the Kingdom of David. And so, yes. But as far as us living today, it means that they cannot do anything that we don't want to. For an example, forced inoculations. We are very busy getting this word to people that you do not consent, never leave your job. The Nuremberg Code stands, and no matter what they say to you, never take it and never leave your job, because the Kingdom of David is here, it is established, and it is getting more, more and more people are coming on every day, people up into it. That are forerunners. They've got lots of people under them that are wanting remedy, and nobody knows where to go or what to do. This is the remedy, and Yah always gives us a way out of things, and it's this is the time. The Kingdom of David has re-established itself, and I'd just like to read a little something that's on his website, if I can, Zen.
Please, yes, please.
Okay. The house of David is likened to be as a seed of rebirth, buried deep in the soil of the spirit of mankind, deep and dormant and expectant, waiting for the exact time in history to emerge, regenerated and brought back to life. Is it any wonder then that the name David, which is David Williams, is easily seen as an anagram for Davida, which means life in the Western Romance languages derived from its Latin of the Roman Empire? We continue to live in Roman times, in the bondage of its empire, with the continuation of centuries of design and deceit, leading to the creation of the empire state, where the Federal Reserve, the United Nations, and the Wall Street of stocks and bonds, stockyards for the human cattle and the branding of the same with commercial debt paper of bondage, are situated. So the seed that was planted long ago, the seed of life, has emerged from its dormancy and has been watered by the infinite and uncountable tears of mankind, seeking an answer to how to walk out the ligages of bondage of that Roman and Babylonian system of debt enslavement that we have endured for millennia.
Wow. That is cool. Very, very cool. And I'm, again, we're going to be doing, I believe it's Tuesday next week during the daytime. I'll definitely have to establish the times, but we'll let all of you know beforehand. I'll announce it on our Facebook page as to the follow-up shows and the information that will be covered therein. But yeah, that's amazing. And what was the website again for people that want to know more of the Kingdom of David and as far as placing themselves under Yahuwah's law?
It's the Proclamation of Peace. So it's proclamation of peace.
Okay.
.org.
I see some comments in the chat, Zen, that some guys are taking the literal sense of the word in all caps, but this is just to read. This is not. They mustn't take that in the literal sense pertaining to this website. This website has been set up by those that are not going to educate you. This is so that all can understand what's being stated. You will delve into the greater detail as to the law, syntax, and those type of things going forward. So don't judge if you see all caps names and things like that. You must remember it is an organization. It is a it is a group. It's not a living entity that we're joining. We're joining a trust, a corporation soul. So that's why it would be the De Vida Society would be written in that manner and the like. So it's got to, when it's concerning the living man and the living woman, that is when we have upper and lower case to be in correct English. But any corporation can be written up in all caps, because that is how a dead legal fiction is established on paper.
In studying what you have and in learning about what in researching this topic and information, how many others have you come across, and have you engaged those from the Proclamation of Peace website in speaking with them about these topics? Because, again, I think this is something that is new, even though I've heard a little bit about some of what you have presented, but not in the totality that you have, and certainly not in the manner where you've implemented into your life and reestablished yourself in a different manner than the majority of people living under the matrix. And so can you talk a little bit about that as well?
We haven't really had a direct contact with those that have created the site. We deal with a group in New Zealand which are like-minded. They're like us. They stand on a common law. We're just servants in this setup. We're just educating others, having been exposed to the benefits, one, of standing as a living man and a living woman under common law, which is already outside of the maritime realm, and having gone down that path as individuals, not having the law form associated with the Proclamation of Peace and the Court of the Ecclesia or the Kingdom of David. We've done it as individuals, so we've had to do ours from individual points of knowledge where we've studied, but the law form associated with the Kingdom of David knows everything that I'm telling you. I've just given you a lot of information in a brief sort of time frame. When people go onto the website and start reading their proclamations, the proclamations of peace and the establishment of the Court of the Ecclesia, all of these documents are thorough. They cover in detail what I've been covering this morning, probably to a level and in terminologies that most will not be familiar with or have not associated with before. But read it once or twice and it will make sense. There's a lot of information on the site as to how it is proclaimed, its claim to fame, how it's going to work, how it does work, the law forms involved in its creation and establishment, how it affects our daily lives or will affect our daily lives going forward, how it assists us in stepping out of this matrix, this Babylonian matrix that's associated with our birth certificates. How do we give physical effect to standing separate to this governance and the system that we have been hogtied by for our entire lives, because a lot of us look at it as our only way out. Some of us are in servitude to it by way of being on the dole or receiving grants or benefits from government. All of you people need to realize this thing, and this thing alone. You are millionaires in your own right, all of you, based on the values associated with your Sestu KB trust that have been associated. And you basically get the scraps of the table on something that you should be accessing a lot better than what you currently are. Whether you are in servitude to government and you're being assisted with financial grants or whatever the case may be, this knowledge that you're going to gain is going to elevate you to a level of no longer being a slave but a master. So it has far-reaching ramifications, not just financial ones, but just the right to live in peace without being in servitude to Rome and not beholden to any man but Yahuwah. And this gives us that vehicle to do so. So I encourage each and every one, each child of Yah, to take the time, do your due diligence, and follow this path, follow this road, and research it for yourself. And if you have any questions, to bring them forth contact Zen, and if there is enough, we can always revisit Zen.
Yes, absolutely. If you have any questions going forth, especially for those of you that listen to the archives, and that you want to, in the next series, to send us questions to be able to ask Kylee or James in the shows that we'll be doing going forth. I know this is a very complicated and very in-depth topic, and probably those of you will need to go to the Proclamation for Peace website, look at it, examine it, study it, and then maybe then send forth your inquiries. But you can do that at sacredwordpublishing.com. Just send in your question and, in the subject line, and make sure to hit the contact us there. And my kids that monitor and run the website, they will contact us and let us know and gather those questions for these later shows. But, in the time that we have remaining, you had made mention of how individuals can empowering themselves in this manner that they could stave off, the forced inoculations. And certainly that is a topic of great interest right now that many people, especially those that are working in the healthcare industry, that they are, trying to combat being forced to take this hokey pokey. Of course, we have to, use this kind of code word because this is a topic that we can be flagged for, and so we have to kind of keep it low key. But can you talk a little bit more about that and how it is that they could do that? Because this is certainly something that I think a lot of people would be interested in.
Yes, when you join, it's just a very simple form that you fill out, and then immediately they send you back confirmation. And with that, you get 2 sacred writs that you can present to anybody, your employer or a police officer or somebody that is making you feel very uncomfortable that you need to do something you don't want to do. You can show them these writs. One of them's non-consent, another one is prohibitio, where it's got your name embedded in the document, and so immediately before you've even finished your application process, because there's a couple of other things that you need to sign and have witnessed and sent back to them, but immediately you'll get these writs. So they've been very thoughtful in the way that they've done the application on what people need, knowing that this is something we need to get out urgently to people. Then somebody asked the question too, what is the cost? There is no cost at all. Costs nothing to join. And in saying that too, there's a lot of funding going into it, so that's for another day. But things will be set up which will benefit everybody that is in the kingdom. Yeah.
Then just coming back to how we sign up. When you've put up your details and you've created your profile on the site, as Kylee says, you'll get a package back from them. It's about a 60-page document that you'll get back, but not all of that is needed to download. There are only certain documents, and you'll read there's a 4-page instruction. It's very straightforward. It's very easy. There are only 2 documents that you will end up uploading again to your file with reference to your court number. So every new application will get a reference to a court number, which will bring you under the umbrella and protection of the court of the ecclesia. This is this law form we've been discussing this evening, today. And that document is, it's just a matter of you signing the one and your thumbprint over the word seal, and then having your signature and thumbprint witnessed by 2 witnesses who will do exactly the same on the accompanying page. So that's it. It's literally 2 pages to start. And it's literally your signatures and 2 witnesses that get uploaded again, and then you'll get a welcome package where if you've done everything correctly and it's can be read correctly and you've made no mistakes, If you have made any mistakes, they will tell you in an email to rectify this or rectify that, whatever it is, but it would be straightforward and easy. You re-upload it to your profile, wait for confirmation that all is okay, and then you're in. That's it. It's a done deal. You have the protections, you will have the writs, you'll have the paperwork, and then you will follow a second lot of instructions where you will serve those that should be served in your neighborhood. When I say that, I'm basically meaning your local government. If you're in one of the 50 states of the US or wherever you are, you'll serve your government, your prime minister, your Ministry of Police, Ministry of Health. So there are about 8 or 10 individuals that will be part of the serving of these documents, letting them know now who you are, your claim to fame, the fact that you have now remedied and rectified this fraud pertaining to your birth certificate, that you now belong to an association called the Davida Society. We have our own law form which stands superior to theirs, and they are literally put on notice in a lawful and legal manner that they understand exactly what it is that you're saying. They know this is coming. We have spoken to and are working with some really good people here in New Zealand who are behind a lot of the funding that is going to be going into this law form and awakening the masses here. If you can imagine New Zealand, we've got an issue here where First Nation peoples have literally been scalped for access to their access to KB trusts, and they make up the majority of those in our jails and our incarceration systems. They make up the vast majority. Now, this is the kind of law form that is going to give those kind of individuals remedy. One of the greatest things in our legal system is if they can get you into jail, they have the right and access to your trust to extract between $3,000 to $10,000 per day per individual for the time that you are incarcerated within their so-called prisons. So that gives you a level of the gravity involved with how they go about scalping us and using us as collateral so that they can access our trust. It's absolute. It's an abomination in every sense of the word. So this is remedy. This is remedy for those type of people that shouldn't be where they are. And of the 14 writs that are available to members of the Davida Society, they cover from mandamus to a writ of certiorari, entry, habeas corpus. I don't have them all in front of me, but there are 14 of them which have got bearing and have got teeth in this maritime legal system. And even if you, for instance, you could have somebody that's incarcerated and have 2 family members or 3 family members that bring this to the attention of the court of the ecclesia, and it could be turned over. It could be set aside if the court feels that he's wrongly imprisoned. In another instance, you could just be going through court, having most of your court system already heard, and you could put in a writ of prohibitio and cease all the court actions until such time as the court of the ecclesia has heard the matter, because in many instances you are not getting a fair shake within their legal system in any case. They are there to scalp you, and scalp you they will. So I encourage all those that have had run-in with the law, those that haven't and just want the protections from this forced or mandated vaccination. This is your remedy, and this is your right and entitlement to claim this remedy.
Yep.
Wow, that's awesome. And I think that, a lot of the native people, certainly all over the world, would be interested because they have been persecuted.
Yep.
Their rights infringed. And it reminds me of the story of Leonard Peltier and how he was locked up for just being an activist fighting for indigenous rights here in this country. But I do want to thank both of you again for coming on and joining us. And as I said, we will establish, is it Tuesday at 1 or 2 o'clock? I think we were going to get together this week and next week and Was that about the right time? That worked for y'all?
Yeah, I'll need to look at what the time difference is, but look, that's okay. We'll be there.
Okay, well, we'll figure out a time that works, because I know that you guys are way behind us. I don't want to keep you up, late night or anything. So we'll figure out a time and we'll get it set up, but it will be Tuesday sometime. Oh, I think Monday actually, because my son has a show that he does on Tuesday. So yeah, so it'll be Monday, but I'll get with you both and we'll get it set up and then I'll post it on Facebook. Thank you everybody for joining us. God bless you. Thank you, Kylee and James.
Cheers, Zen. Cheers, guys.
Shalom. Be blessed all. Good night.
Thank you everybody for joining us for this video and this broadcast. We appreciate all of you and thank you for your patronage. Please do like and subscribe and share with your friends. God bless all of you in your seeking.